The stars moved slowly past the great windows of the royal starship Eternal Crown. Kang Tae-ho stood alone in the observation deck, watching the endless darkness of space. He had been aboard this ship for 2 years now, serving as a cultural liaison between humans and the Velrani Empire. 2 years of cold stares. 2 years of whispered insults. 2 years of being treated like something less than nothing. The Velrani were tall and beautiful in a way that made humans feel small. Their skin was pale blue, and their eyes glowed softly in the dark. They lived for thousands of years, and they looked at humans the way humans might look at insects. Short-lived, emotional, weak. These were the words Tae-ho heard most often. When the Velrani spoke about his kind, he did not blame them. To beings who lived for millennia, a human life must seem like a single breath, here and then gone. What value could such a brief existence hold? Tae-ho was 34 years old. He had been a soldier once, back on Earth. He had seen war and death and the worst things humans could do to each other. When the diplomatic corps offered him a chance to serve aboard a Velrani vessel, he had accepted without hesitation. He thought perhaps he could help build a bridge between their peoples. Perhaps he could make a difference. Most days, he wondered if he had been foolish to hope. The door behind him slid open with a soft hiss. Tae-ho did not turn around. He already knew who it was. Only one person on this entire ship ever came looking for him. Tae-ho. The voice was high and excited, like bells ringing in the morning. I found you. Tae-ho. 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 He smiled and turned to face the small figure running toward him. Princess Nuri was the queen's only daughter. She was young by Velrani standards, equivalent to a human child of about 8 years old. Her skin was a lighter shade of blue than the adults, and her glowing eyes were wide with curiosity and joy. You found me, Tae-ho said, kneeling down so he could meet her eyes. But should you not be with your tutors, little star? Nuri made a face. They are boring. They only want to talk about history and politics. I want to hear more stories. Stories? Yes, human stories. The ones you told me before. About the rabbit on the moon and the tiger who was tricked by the dried persimmon. Tae-ho laughed softly. He had told her Korean folktales one evening, when she had wandered into the observation deck looking lost and lonely. Since that night, she returned again and again, always hungry for more stories about the strange, short-lived creatures called humans. Your mother might not approve, Tae-ho said gently. Mother does not need to know everything. Nuri grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the bench by the window. Please, Tae-ho? Just one story? Just one story. He could never refuse her. There was something about this child that reminded him of his own niece back on Earth. The same bright eyes. The same endless curiosity. The same belief that the universe was full of wonders waiting to be discovered. So he sat beside her and told her the story of the woodcutter and the fairy who came down from heaven. He told her about love and sacrifice, and the pain of being separated from those you cherish most. Nuri listened with her whole body, leaning forward, her small hands clasped together. When he finished, her eyes were wet with tears. That is a sad story, she whispered. Many human stories are sad, Tae-ho admitted. But they are also beautiful. We believe that sadness and beauty often walk hand in hand. Nuri thought about this for a long moment. Then she looked up at him with a serious expression that seemed too old for her young face. Tae-ho, why do humans live such short lives? The question caught him off guard. He had asked himself the same thing many times, standing on this observation deck, watching the eternal stars. I do not know, little star, he said honestly. Perhaps the universe wanted us to feel everything more deeply. When you know your time is short, every moment becomes precious. Every laugh, every tear, every sunrise. Is that why humans smile so much? Perhaps. Or perhaps we are simply too stubborn to let the darkness win. Nuri smiled at that. It was a bright, genuine smile that warmed something cold inside Tae-ho's chest. Neither of them noticed the figure standing in the shadows of the doorway. Queen Ira watched them in silence, her ancient eyes unreadable. She had ruled the Velrani Empire for 3,000 years. She had seen civilizations rise and fall. She had outlived enemies and allies alike, but she had never seen anyone make her daughter smile like that. The queen watched the human male for a long moment. He was so fragile, so temporary. His hair was already showing streaks of gray, and there were lines around his eyes when he laughed. To her, he was like a candle flame that could be snuffed out by the smallest breeze. And yet, he sat with her daughter as if he had all the time in the world. He spoke to her with patience and kindness. He treated her not as a princess, but as a person. Queen Ira turned and walked away without making a sound. She said nothing to anyone about what she had seen, but she did not forget. In the following weeks, the tension aboard the Eternal Crown grew worse. There were factions within the Velrani court who opposed the queen's decision to allow humans aboard royal vessels. They whispered in dark corners. They plotted in secret. They believed that association with such inferior creatures weakened the empire. Tejo felt their hatred like a cold wind at his back. He received threats carved into the wall of his small cabin. He found his food poisoned on 3 separate occasions. He learned to eat only what he prepared himself, in the human style, with ingredients he kept locked away. He reported none of this. What would be the point? He was one human among thousands of Velrani. His complaints would only make things worse, but still, every evening, Nuri would find him, and every evening, he would tell her stories. On the night everything changed, the Eternal Crown received a distress signal from a damaged station on the edge of contested territory. The Queen ordered an immediate response. It was her duty to protect all Velrani citizens, even those in the most remote corners of space. Tejo stood at his post, watching the crew prepare for the rescue mission. He had a bad feeling in his gut. The same feeling he used to get before an ambush back in his soldier days. Something was wrong. He could feel it in his bones. But when he looked across the bridge and saw Nuri waving at him with excitement in her eyes, he pushed the feeling aside. Whatever came next, he would face it. That was what humans did. They faced the darkness. Even when they knew they could not win. He just did not know yet how dark the coming hours would be. The space station hung in the darkness like a wounded animal. Its lights flickered weakly, and parts of its outer shell had been torn away, exposing the metal bones beneath. The distress signal had stopped hours ago. But the Queen had ordered the mission to proceed anyway. There might still be survivors inside. Tejo stood in the shuttle bay with the rescue team. He was not supposed to be here. Cultural liaisons did not go on rescue missions. But Nuri had begged her mother with tears in her glowing eyes, and the Queen had finally agreed to let her daughter observe the mission from a safe distance. And if Nuri was going, she wanted Tejo to come with her. "I want to see a human adventure," she had said, bouncing with excitement. "The kind you always tell me about in your stories." Tejo had tried to explain that real adventures were not like stories. Real adventures were frightening and painful. And sometimes people did not come back from them. But Nuri was young and brave and full of the belief that nothing truly bad could ever happen to her. He wished he still had that kind of faith. The shuttle carried 20 Velrani guards, 2 diplomats, Princess Nuri, and 1 human. Commander Bora led the guards. She was a tall warrior with cold eyes and a long scar running down the left side of her face. She had made no secret of her hatred for humans. Every time she looked at Tejo, her lip curled with disgust. "Stay close to the princess," she ordered him as they prepared to dock. "And stay out of our way." "Ah," Tejo nodded silently. He had learned long ago that arguing with people like Bora only made things worse. The station was dark inside. Emergency lights cast red shadows on the walls, and the air was cold and stale. The rescue team moved through the empty corridors in tight formation, their weapons ready. Nuri walked in the center of the group, protected on all sides by guards. Tejo stayed at her shoulder, his eyes scanning every shadow. Something was wrong. He could feel it more strongly now. The station was too quiet, too empty. If there had been a disaster, where were the bodies? Where was the damage inside the walls? The exterior had looked like it had been attacked, but the interior seemed almost untouched. It was a trap. He knew it in his bones. "Commander," he said quietly, moving closer to Bora. "We should turn back." She did not even look at him. "Silence, human. You do not give orders here. Please listen to me. Something is not right. This feels like an ambush." Now she did look at him, and her eyes were full of contempt. "Your species jumps at shadows. It is why you die so young. Fear weakens the heart." Teho opened his mouth to argue, but before he could speak, the lights went out. Complete darkness. Then the screaming began. Plasma bolts tore through the air, bright green lines that burned through armor and flesh. The guards returned fire, but they could not see their enemies. Dark figures moved through the shadows, striking fast and vanishing before anyone could react. "Protect the princess," Commander Bora shouted. "Form a circle around her." But the attackers were already inside their formation. Teho saw a guard fall, his chest smoking from a direct hit. Another guard screamed as a blade found his throat. The air was full of the sounds of battle and death. Teho grabbed Nuri's hand and pulled her behind a support column. She was shaking, her glowing eyes wide with terror. This was not the adventure she had imagined. This was not a story. "Stay here," he told her. "Do not move. Do not make a sound." "Teho, I am scared. I know, little star. But I need you to be brave. Can you do that for me?" She nodded, tears streaming down her blue cheeks. Teho looked around the corner. The battle was moving away from them, deeper into the station. Most of the guards were fighting in that direction, trying to push back the attackers. But 3 dark figures had broken away from the main group. They were moving toward the column where Nuri was hiding. They knew. They had come for her specifically. Teho understood everything in that moment. This was not a random attack. This was an assassination attempt. Someone wanted the princess dead. He had no weapon. He had no armor. He was just a human, fragile and weak in the eyes of the universe. But Nuri was behind him, and he would not let anyone hurt her. He stepped out from behind the column and stood in the path of the 3 assassins. They stopped, surprised to see a human standing before them. One of them laughed. It was an ugly sound, full of cruelty. "Move aside, little creature," the assassin said. "We have no interest in killing you. Our target is the child." Teho did not move. His heart was pounding in his chest, and his hands were shaking, but he stood firm. "You will not touch her." The assassins looked at each other. Then they attacked. Teho had been a soldier. He had trained for years in combat, but he was fighting Velrani warriors who were faster, stronger, and better armed than him. He should have died in seconds, but something strange happened when he fought to protect Nuri. His fear disappeared. His body moved without thought, guided by pure instinct. He ducked under the first swing, grabbed a broken pipe from the debris on the floor, and swung it into the second assassin's knee. The Velrani crumpled, howling in pain. Teho did not hesitate. He drove the pipe into the fallen warrior's throat before either of the others could react. 2 left. They were more careful now. They circled him like predators, their blades gleaming in the emergency light. "Impressive," one of them admitted. "For a human." Teho said nothing. He was breathing hard, and blood was running down his arm from a cut he did not remember receiving. His body was already reaching its limits, but he would not stop. He could not stop. The assassins attacked together. Teho blocked one blade with his pipe and twisted away from the other. He felt steel graze his side, leaving a line of fire across his ribs. He ignored the pain and brought his pipe down on the wrist of the assassin in front of him. Bones cracked. The assassin dropped his blade. Teho grabbed the fallen weapon and drove it through the assassin's heart. 1 left. Just 1 more. But his body was failing him. The wounds were catching up with him. His vision was getting dark around the edges, and his legs felt like they were made of water. The last assassin smiled. He knew he had won. "You fought well, human. Better than I expected. But this is the end." He lunged forward, his blade aimed at Teho's chest. Teho did not try to block. He did not try to dodge. Instead, he stepped forward, into the blade, and wrapped his arms around the assassin. The steel punched through his chest, just below his heart. The pain was beyond anything he had ever felt. But his arms were around the assassin now, and he squeezed with everything he had left. The assassin's eyes went wide. He tried to pull away, but Taeho held on. He held on until his vision went black. He held on until Commander Bora arrived and cut the assassin down with a single swing of her blade. Then Taeho fell. He was aware of Nuri screaming his name. He felt her small hands pressing against his chest, trying to stop the blood. He heard her crying, begging him to stay. Taeho, please, do not go, do not go. He wanted to tell her that it was okay. He wanted to tell her that he was not afraid. He wanted to tell her that protecting her was the greatest honor of his short, fragile life. But the darkness was too deep, and the words would not come. The last thing he heard before he lost consciousness was the sound of Nuri crying. It was the saddest sound he had ever heard. The medical bay of the Eternal Crown was silent, except for the soft beeping of machines. Taeho lay on a white bed, his body wrapped in bandages that were already turning red with blood. Tubes ran from his arms to devices that pumped medicine into his failing body. His face was pale, almost gray, and his breathing was so shallow that it was barely visible. Nuri sat in a chair beside his bed. She had not moved since they brought him aboard. Her small hands were still stained with his blood, and her eyes were swollen from crying. Every few minutes, she would reach out and touch his hand, as if making sure he was still there. "Please wake up," she whispered. "Please. Taeho. I still have so many questions. You promised to teach me more Korean words. You promised to finish the story about the sun and the moon. You cannot leave. You cannot." High Physician Oma stood at the monitoring station, studying the data on her screens. She was one of the most brilliant doctors in the Velrani Empire, a master of medicine who had saved thousands of lives. But as she looked at the numbers, her expression grew darker. "This is beyond my abilities," she admitted quietly to her assistant. "Human biology is too different from ours. His organs are shutting down one by one. His blood is wrong. His cells regenerate too slowly. Everything about him is failing. Can we not try our standard treatments?" "I did. They made things worse. Our medicine is designed for Velrani bodies. For him, it is almost like poison." Oma shook her head slowly. "He will be dead within hours. There is nothing I can do." Nuri heard the words. She stood up from her chair, her small body trembling with grief and anger. "No. You have to save him. You are the best doctor in the Empire. You cannot just let him die." Oma looked at the child with something close to pity. I am sorry, Princess. Some things are beyond the power of medicine. His species is simply too fragile. Too weak." "He is not weak," Nuri's voice cracked. "He killed 3 assassins with his bare hands. He protected me when everyone else failed. He is the bravest person I have ever known. Bravery cannot heal a punctured lung, Princess. Courage cannot restart a failing heart." Oma sighed. "I am truly sorry. This human was unusual, but his death is inevitable." The doors to the medical bay slid open with a sound like thunder. Queen Ira entered. Everyone in the room froze. The Queen had never set foot in the lower medical wing. She was surrounded by an aura of power that pressed down on everyone like a physical weight. Her eyes, ancient and cold, swept across the room and settled on the broken human lying on the bed. "Mother," Nuri ran to her, grabbing her robes with bloody hands. "Mother, please. Tell them to save him. They say they cannot. But they have to try. He protected me. He almost died for me." The Queen looked down at her daughter. Then she looked at Taeho. For a long moment, she was silent. She remembered the observation deck. She remembered watching this human sit with her daughter, telling her stories, teaching her words from his distant homeworld. She remembered the way he smiled when Nuri laughed. She remembered thinking that he was just a brief flicker of life, here and then gone. But he was not gone yet, and he had done what 100 of her elite guards had failed to do. He had kept her daughter alive. "Report," the queen commanded. Oma stepped forward, her head bowed low. "Your Majesty, the human's injuries are severe. The blade damaged his lung and came close to his heart. We have stabilized him temporarily, but his organs are failing. Velrani medicine cannot treat human physiology. His death will occur within 4 to 6 hours. Then find medicine that can treat him." Oma hesitated. "Your Majesty, there is no such medicine aboard this ship. Humans have only recently been allowed in our space. We have no experience with their biology. We have no treatments, no research, no—" "Then get them." The Queen's voice was like ice. "Contact every xenobiologist in the Empire. Send messages to human space demanding their medical data. I do not care what it costs. I do not care what protocols you must break. You will save this human." The room was silent. Everyone stared at the Queen in disbelief. All of this effort for one human? One brief, insignificant life? An advisor stepped forward, an old Velrani with many rings of rank on his fingers. "Your Majesty, with respect, is this wise? The human is just a liaison. His death, while unfortunate, is not worth disrupting the entire ship. We should focus on finding the traitors who organized this attack, not on what?" The Queen turned to face him, and her eyes burned with cold fire. "Not on saving the life of the one who protected my daughter? He was doing his duty. Any guard would have done the same. Would they?" The Queen's voice was soft now, but somehow more terrifying. "Where were my guards when the assassins found Nuri? Where were my elite warriors when she was cornered and alone? They were fighting in the corridors. They were protecting themselves. But this human, this fragile, short-lived creature that you all despise, he stood between my daughter and death with nothing but a broken pipe in his hands." She stepped closer to the advisor, and he shrank back in fear. "He did not hesitate," the Queen continued. "He did not calculate his odds. He did not think about whether a princess was worth his life. He simply protected her. He gave everything he had, everything he was, for a child who is not even his own species." The advisor tried to speak, but no words came out. "If we cannot honor such a soul," the Queen said, "then we deserve to fall." She turned to Oma. "You will save him. I do not care how. I do not care what it takes. If he dies, I will hold you personally responsible. Do you understand?" Oma bowed deeply. "Yes, Your Majesty. I will do everything in my power." The Queen nodded and walked to Teho's bedside. She looked down at him for a long moment. His chest rose and fell in weak, shallow breaths. His heartbeat was slow and irregular on the monitor. "Human," she said softly. "Kang Teho, can you hear me?" There was no response. He was too far gone for words. "You saved my daughter. You gave her back to me. I will not let the universe take you in return. Do you understand? I will not allow it." She reached down and touched his hand. His skin was cold, but she could feel the faint pulse of life still fighting inside him. "Fight," she commanded. "Fight as you fought for her. Hold on. Help is coming." Hours passed. Oma and her team worked without rest, trying every treatment they could think of. They contacted researchers across the Empire. They sent urgent messages to human space, begging for medical information. Finally, a response came. A human doctor named Yoon Hana, stationed on a medical vessel near the border, had volunteered to help. She was an expert in emergency trauma surgery. She was already on her way, but she was days away, and Teho was dying faster than anyone had expected. As the night wore on, his heart stopped for the first time. The machine screamed alarms as his body gave up the fight. Oma and her team worked desperately, shocking his chest, pumping his heart manually, forcing air into his lungs. For 30 terrible seconds, there was nothing. Then, somehow, his heart started beating again. Nuri collapsed against her mother's side, sobbing with relief and fear. The Queen held her close and watched the human with ancient, unreadable eyes. "He is still fighting," she murmured. Even now, he refuses to give up. She had lived for 3,000 years. She had seen empires rise and fall. She had watched entire species be born and die. But she had never seen anything quite like this human's stubborn refusal to die. And for the first time in centuries, she felt something she had thought was dead inside her. Hope. The eternal crown changed its course. For the first time in 100 years, the royal starship abandoned its planned route and raced at maximum speed toward the border of human space. The engines burned so hot that the engineering crew had to work in shifts to keep them from overheating. The ship was pushing past its limits, and everyone aboard could feel the strain. But the Queen had given her orders. They would reach Dr. Yunhana in time, or they would die trying. In the medical bay, High Physician Oma had not slept in 2 days. Her eyes were red with exhaustion, and her hands trembled slightly as she worked. But she did not stop. She could not stop. The Queen's words echoed in her mind with every passing hour. If he dies, I will hold you personally responsible. Oma had spent her entire life studying Velrani medicine. She had never cared about humans. They were too short-lived, too fragile, too insignificant. Why waste time learning about creatures who would be dead before you finished reading a single medical text? But now she studied human biology with desperate intensity. She read everything she could find in the ship's databases. She analyzed the data that human medical stations sent in response to her urgent requests. She performed tests and scans on Teho's failing body, trying to understand how such a weak creature could still be alive. What she found amazed her. Humans were fragile. There was no denying that. Their bones broke easily. Their organs were inefficient. Their blood carried oxygen poorly compared to Velrani blood. They had no natural armor, no venomous glands, no regenerative abilities worth mentioning. By every measure, they were one of the weakest intelligent species in the known galaxy, and yet, their bodies fought to survive, with a ferocity that Oma had never seen before. Teho's heart stopped twice more during those terrible days. Each time, his body found a way to start again. His cells were dying, but they were dying slowly, resisting death with every molecule. His immune system, weak as it was fighting infections that would have killed him in hours. His brain, starved of oxygen, refused to shut down. It was as if his entire being was screaming at the universe. Not yet. I am not done yet. How is this possible? Oma whispered to herself as she studied the data. He should be dead. By every calculation, he should have died hours ago. What is keeping him alive? She did not know the answer. But she kept working. Outside the medical bay, Commander Bora stood guard. She had not moved from her position since they returned to the ship. Other guards offered to take her place, but she refused. This is my duty, she said. And there was something strange in her voice. Something almost like shame. Bora had always despised humans. She had seen them as weak, pathetic creatures who had no place among the Velrani. She had mocked Teho behind his back. She had ignored his warnings about the trap, and then she had watched him fight. 3 assassins. 3 trained Velrani warriors with blades and armor. And 1 human with a broken pipe and bare hands. He had killed 2 of them. He had held the 3rd in place until Bora could strike the killing blow. And he had done it all while bleeding out, while his body was failing, while every instinct must have been screaming at him to run. She remembered the look in his eyes as he stepped in front of the princess. There had been no hesitation, no fear, just calm determination. He had known he was going to die, and he had not cared. When other guards came to ask about the battle, Bora told them the truth. I saw him fight, she said. He had no claws, no armor, no venom, only his will. And he did not stop. He never stopped. Word spread through the ship. The human who fought like a demon, the human who killed 2 assassins with a pipe, the human who was dying in the medical bay because he had protected the princess. Some Velrani still sneered at the story. But more and more of them began to look at the medical bay with something new in their eyes. Respect. Inside the medical bay, Nuri maintained her vigil. The Queen had ordered her to rest. But she refused to leave Teho's side. She sat in her chair, holding his cold hand, talking to him, even though he could not hear. "Do you remember the story you told me about the rabbit on the moon?" she said softly. "You said the rabbit was so kind that he jumped into the fire to feed a hungry traveler. And the traveler was so touched by his sacrifice that he put the rabbit on the moon, so everyone could see him forever." She wiped tears from her eyes. "You are like that rabbit, Taeho. You jumped into the fire for me. But I do not want you to go to the moon. I want you to stay here. With me." She squeezed his hand. "Please stay." On the third day, the Queen came to the medical bay in the quiet hours of the night cycle. The lights were dimmed, and most of the staff had gone to rest. Only Oma remained, checking monitors and adjusting treatments. The Queen walked to Taeho's bedside and looked down at him. His condition had stabilized slightly, but he was still dying. The damage was too severe. Without proper surgery, without proper medicine, his body would fail. "How long?" the Queen asked. "A day, perhaps 2, Oma replied wearily. "Dr. Yoon will arrive in 16 hours. If he survives until then, there may be hope." The Queen nodded slowly. She reached down and touched Taeho's forehead. His skin was cold and damp with fever. "Human," she said, her voice low. "I have lived for 3,000 years. I have seen things you cannot imagine. I have lost more people than I can count. I thought that I had forgotten how to feel grief. I thought my heart had turned to stone." She paused. "But when I saw you fall, when I saw my daughter crying over your body, I felt something I had not felt in centuries. I felt afraid. Afraid of losing you. Afraid of what it would mean if someone so good, so brave, so purely selfless could simply vanish from the universe." She leaned closer. "You gave her back to me, my daughter, my only child. The one thing in this universe that I still love. You saved her without asking for anything in return. You did not think about rewards or honors, or even survival. You simply protected her." Her voice broke slightly. "I have ruled this empire for millennia. I have commanded armies. I have shaped the destiny of billions. But I cannot do what you did. I cannot love so freely. I cannot sacrifice so completely. In all my years, I have never met anyone like you." She straightened. "So I make you this promise, Kang Taeho. I will not let you die. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not for a long time yet. You will live to see my daughter grow. You will live to tell her more stories. You will live because the universe owes you that much. And if the universe will not pay its debts, then I will force it to." At that moment, a message came through the communication system. "Medical Bay. This is the bridge. Dr. Yoonhana's shuttle has just entered our sensor range. She will be docking in 12 hours. 12 hours. Taeho just had to hold on for 12 more hours. The Queen looked at his still form, at his shallow breathing, at the machines fighting to keep him alive. "Hold on," she whispered. "Help is coming. Just hold on a little longer." And somewhere, deep in the darkness of his failing body, Taeho heard her. He held on. Dr. Yoon-hana arrived on the Eternal Crown looking like she had not slept in a week. She was a small woman with tired eyes and steady hands, carrying a bag of medical supplies that she had gathered from every human station between her ship and the border. She did not waste time with greetings or formalities. She walked straight to the medical bay and began working. For 12 hours, she and Oma operated together. It was an impossible partnership. Human medicine and Velrani technology. Two systems that had never been designed to work together. But somehow, they made it work. Hana's hands were quick and precise, cutting and stitching with the skill of someone who had saved hundreds of lives. Oma's equipment and knowledge kept Taeho stable, monitoring every heartbeat, every breath. The Queen waited outside the surgical chamber. Nuri slept against her shoulder, exhausted beyond words. Commander Bora stood nearby, silent and watchful. When the door finally opened, Hana walked out with blood on her surgical gown and exhaustion in her eyes. But she was smiling. "He made it," she said. "The stubborn fool actually made it." Nuri woke instantly. She looked at Hana with desperate hope. He is alive? Taeho is alive? His heart is beating on its own. His lungs are working. The internal bleeding has stopped. Hana shook her head in amazement. I have never seen anyone fight so hard to survive. Most people would have given up days ago. But not him. Not once. The queen stood slowly. Will he recover fully? It will take time. Months, maybe. His body has been through terrible trauma. But yes, I believe he will recover. Hana looked at the queen with curious eyes. You moved an entire royal starship for one human. You contacted half the galaxy for medical data. Why? The queen did not answer for a long moment. Then she said, because he deserved it. 3 weeks later, Taeho opened his eyes. The first thing he saw was flowers. Strange, alien flowers in colors he had no names for, arranged in vases around his bed. The room was filled with soft light, and the air smelled sweet and clean. He tried to move and found that his body ached in ways he had never imagined possible. His chest felt like it had been torn apart and put back together. His arms were weak, and his legs refused to obey his commands, but he was alive. A small figure was curled up in a chair beside his bed, covered in a blanket. It took him a moment to recognize her. Nuri. Her face was peaceful in sleep, but there were dark circles under her eyes that told a story of many sleepless nights. Taeho tried to speak, but his throat was too dry. He managed a small sound, barely more than a whisper. It was enough. Nuri's eyes flew open. For one heartbeat, she stared at him, as if she could not believe what she was seeing. Then she threw herself at him, wrapping her small arms around his neck, crying and laughing at the same time. Taeho, you are awake. You are really awake. Careful, he whispered, his voice rough. My chest. She pulled back immediately, her eyes wide with worry. I am sorry. Did I hurt you? Are you okay? He managed a weak smile. I am okay, little star. I am okay. Nuri burst into tears again. I thought you were going to die. I thought I would never hear your voice again. I was so scared, Taeho. I was so scared. He reached out with a trembling hand and touched her cheek. I am sorry I frightened you. I am sorry I made you cry. Do not apologize. She grabbed his hand and held it tight. You saved my life. You protected me. You are my hero. The door opened, and Queen Ira entered. She was followed by Commander Bora, High Physician Oma, and Dr. Yoon Hana. They gathered around the bed, looking down at Taeho with expressions that ranged from relief to wonder. The queen stepped forward. For a long moment, she simply looked at him. Then, for the first time that anyone could remember, she smiled. Welcome back, Kang Taeho. Taeho tried to bow from his bed, a gesture of respect. The queen stopped him with a raised hand. Do not. You owe me nothing. It is we who owed you a debt we could never repay. She reached into her robes and pulled out a small object made of crystal and gold. By royal decree, I hereby grant you the title of Shield of the Crown. It is the highest honor a non-Velrani can receive. From this day forward, you are considered a member of the royal household. You will have a permanent place on this ship, in my court, and in my family. Taeho stared at the medal in shock. Your Majesty, I do not deserve. You deserve more than I can give. The queen interrupted. You saved my daughter. You asked for nothing in return. In all my centuries, I have never seen such pure and selfless courage. She placed the medal on his chest. Wear this with pride. You have earned it. Oma stepped forward next. She looked uncomfortable, as if the words she was about to say were difficult for her. I owe you an apology, human. I thought your species was weak and insignificant. I was wrong. Your body fought harder to survive than any Velrani I have ever treated. You taught me that strength is not about claws or armor or living for thousands of years. True strength is the will to never give up. Commander Bora was next. She knelt beside his bed, her head bowed. I treated you with disrespect. I ignored your warning about the trap. If I had listened, none of this would have happened. She looked up, and there were tears in her eyes. I have requested to be assigned as your personal guard. It is a matter of honor, if you will have me." Taeho did not know what to say. A week ago, these people had looked at him like he was nothing. Now they were kneeling before him, offering apologies and service. "Please stand," he said softly. "All of you. I did not do this for honors or respect. I did it because it was the right thing to do. Any of you would have done the same." "No," the queen said. "We would not. That is what makes you different. That is what makes humans remarkable." She turned to address everyone in the room. "Let the story of Kang Tae-ho be recorded in the Imperial Archives. Let every citizen of the Velrani Empire know what he did. Let them know that courage is not measured in years of life or strength of body, but in the willingness to sacrifice everything for another." In the months that followed, Tae-ho slowly recovered. Dr. Yoon Hana stayed aboard the ship as a permanent medical liaison, working alongside Oma to bridge the gap between human and Velrani medicine. Commander Bora became his constant shadow, watching over him with fierce dedication, and the story of the human who would not die spread across the empire. It was told in court halls and military academies. It was sung by poets and written in books. The Velrani, who had always looked down on humans, began to see them differently. They began to ask questions. What made humans so brave? What gave them the strength to fight against impossible odds? The answer was simple, but it took the Velrani a long time to understand it. Humans knew they were fragile. They knew their lives were short, and so they chose to fill those brief years with love, with courage, with moments that mattered. They did not fight because they expected to win. They fought because some things were worth fighting for, even if they lost. One evening, months after his recovery, Tae-ho sat in the royal garden with Nuri. The artificial sky above them displayed a perfect sunset, painted in colors of orange and pink. Nuri was learning to write Korean characters on a tablet, her tongue sticking out in concentration. "Tae-ho," she said suddenly, looking up at him. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course, little star. Why did you do it? Why did you almost die for me? I am not even human. You could have run away. No one would have blamed you." Tae-ho thought about the question for a long moment. He remembered the darkness of the station, the fear in his chest, the 3 assassins standing between him and the child he had grown to love. "Because," he said finally, "some things are worth more than living. Because I, Nuri did not understand. Not fully. She was still young. But she would remember those words for the rest of her long life. She took his hand and held it tight. High above them, standing on a balcony overlooking the garden, Queen Ira watched them, her daughter and the human who had saved her. 2 beings from different worlds, different species, different lifespans, and yet, somehow, they had found each other. For 3,000 years, the queen had ruled with cold calculation. She had made decisions based on politics and power, never on emotion. She had forgotten what it felt like to hope, but watching them now, watching the sunset paint their faces in gold, she remembered. She remembered that even in a universe full of darkness, there were moments of light. There were people who would sacrifice everything for those they loved. There were bonds that transcended species and language and time. And she remembered that hope was not about knowing that things would get better. Hope was about believing that they could. She smiled and turned away from the balcony, leaving them to their moment. The stars continued their endless journey through the void. The eternal crown sailed on toward new horizons, and somewhere in the garden, a human and a princess watched the sunset together, holding hands and dreaming of tomorrow. It was, Tae-ho thought, enough. It was more than enough.